Tracking. On Good Morning Nigeria today, we'll discuss the composition of President Tinubu's cabinet. On the 28th of last month, July, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu sent the first batch of ministerial nominees to the Senate for screening and confirmation. Now, the list, which came after weeks of speculations, did not provide all the answers, as nominees from 11 states were not included on that list. Now, the Nigerian Constitution 1999, as amended, provides that all states should have at least one minister. And so the anticipation continued. But the anticipation was eventually put to rest on the 2nd of August when the president forwarded another list of 19 nominees to the Senate for screening. And while the screening was ongoing, the president added 2 more nominees: former Minister of State for Labor and Employment, Festus Keyamo, from Delta State, as well as Dr. Beria Mahmood from Kano. Now, the president also withdrew the nomination of Miriam Shetty, also from Kano. And in line with tradition, the Senate took its time to screen all the nominees who appeared before them individually. While others were grilled for hours, some, of course, enjoyed the legislative privilege as they walked away after being asked to take a bow. At the end of the screening, the Senate confirmed 45 of the 48 nominees. And according to the lawmakers, the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, Stella Okotete from Delta, and Abubakar Sani Danladi from Taraba are still undergoing security screening, hence the deferment of their confirmation. So, with the screening and confirmation substantially over, Nigerians are awaiting the swearing in and assignment of portfolios to the ministers designate, who are expected to hit the ground running in driving the president's agenda. There are a number of challenges that need to be attended to as President Tinubu's administration goes about implementing its renewed hope agenda. Indeed, there is a lot of work to be done as Nigerians are awaiting solutions to a number of issues that were inherited from previous administrations and others which emerged with the advent of the current government. Top on the list are mitigating the impact of the removal of fuel subsidy, revamping the economy, tackling insecurity, and navigating on the foreign scene now the political developments in the Niger Republic following the unconstitutional takeover of government. There are a number, of course, top-level matters requiring the attention of government. While some supporters of the ministerial nominees may be celebrating the appointments and a successful screening, the general concern would appear to be on whether or not the appointees would deliver on their mandate. An analysis of the appointments on the face of it indicates the composition to comprise politicians and technocrats with varying experiences and backgrounds. A breakdown shows that there are 26 politicians, 21 technocrats, and 38 males and 9 females amongst the ministerial nominees. By age, the youngest nominee is said to be 36, while the oldest is 68. And in terms of geographical spread, the Northwest Zone has 10 ministers designated now, you might say, Southwest 9, Northeast 8, North Central 8, South 7, and the Southeast 5. But beyond the numbers, Nigerians are equally concerned about the capacity and competence of the nominees to deliver. And given the fact that the list comprises persons who've previously held public office, the question is how much can they do on the current assignment beyond the records that they carry over from their previous engagements. With ultimately a total number of 48 ministers set to be the largest in recent times, if not in the history of the country, how does President Bola Ahmed Tinubu intend to deploy them for effective performance? Nigerians will also like to know how the government intends to manage this large cabinet size and ensure that there are no bureaucratic bottlenecks, power tussle among the ministers when they eventually assign portfolios, and ultimately also reduce the cost of governance. It's on that note we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kingsley Osadolo. My colleague Claire Adelabu Razak, of course, is here with us in the studios, and you'll be hearing her in the course of the program after we take the highlights of the morning news, business news, as well as newspaper review. For now, let's join our colleague Dennis Adegunoye, who has the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Dennis.
Yes, good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. A presidential committee on fiscal policy and tax reforms set up a month ago has been inaugurated. And at the inauguration in the State House, President Bola Tinubu said this was part of steps to revamp the country's economy and a means to improve the lives of Nigerians.
From the tax system to support sustainable development, while at the same time achieving a minimum of 18% tax to GDP ratio within the next 3 years.
Meanwhile, the World Trade Organization says it has been considering ways to alleviate the difficult socio-economic conditions that Nigerians are currently going through. Director General of the WTO, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, said this was part of her discussions as she visited President Bola Tinubu at the State House.
On trying to look at community and grassroots programs that can be put in place to create jobs for young people, on trying to support women and children who are those who are bearing the brunt of some of the suffering in the country. We talked about how for the longer term we need to look at investment opportunities that Nigeria can seize.
President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, has commended the organized labor for its understanding over federal government's policy on the removal of subsidy on petroleum products. He said this during a meeting between the leadership of the Senate and labor unions.
Nigeria has not been able to realize its potentials in terms of generating revenue. And without the revenue being generated, you cannot cater for the welfare of workers and the welfare of citizens. Neither can you even pay your debt.
Mr. President promised that he is going to restructure the mechanism for which we are engaging with government.
Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment, Kachalom Daju, is pleading with the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, NARD, to call off its strike for the sake of millions of people affected and in need of medical care. She said stakeholders at the highest level are meeting on the matter and government is determined to address the demands of the resident doctors.
We appeal to them that they should kindly await when ministers are in place, because permanent secretaries have a threshold, and what the government is expected to pay is far and above the threshold of the permanent secretary.
And the Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, has called on the federal government to quickly conclude measures to resolve areas of disagreement and eschew all punitive responses in the interest of industrial harmony. This is just as it wants the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, NARD, to extend a gesture of goodwill towards the government in the interest of suffering patients and citizens. In a statement, the NMA president, Dr. Uche Ujinma, tasked both the federal government and the striking medical doctors to put aside all obstacles towards speedy resolution of the dispute for the love of the nation. The umbrella body for medical doctors in the country described the labor dispute, which it regrets has gone on for too long to the detriment of Nigerians, as avoidable. The House of Representatives has assured that anyone found complicit in job racketeering at federal ministries, departments and agencies will face the full wrath of the law. Chairman House Ad Hoc Committee investigating job racketeering, Yusuf Gagdi, stated this during the interrogation of management and staff of the Federal Character Commission over allegations of selling jobs.
I was never at any time involved in selling jobs to anyone. I only acted based on instruction, sir.
I've never in my life.
Stand up and scream.
It's here. Ask him to give me 1 naira.
Acting Inspector General of Police Kayode Egbetokun has directed Assistant Inspectors General of Police and Command Commissioners in border states with the Republic of Niger to work in collaboration with other security agencies to nip in the bud criminal activities arising from the coup in Niger Republic. The acting IGP gave the directive at a strategic meeting with senior police officers in Abuja.
Pleased to disclose that our crime-fighting initiatives are paying off, leading to the arrest of 986 armed robbery suspects, 377 kidnapped suspects, including bandits, 848 suspects of homicide.
Well, that's the news for now. Good morning. Nigeria continues after this break with Kingsley and Claire. Good morning.
Is working out modalities.
Hello and welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria. And indeed, one thing with technology is that you can't really predict when they decide to malfunction, and that's exactly what happened this morning. But Kingsley, I'd like to thank Kingsley for coming to the rescue. But let's quickly take a look at business stories now. And border closure threatens 226 million Nigeria-Niger trade. And Alika Banachi Arwa has the details.
The Nigerian-Nigerian trade, worth about 226.34 million, is at risk of breaking down following the recent border closure between the two countries as a result of the military takeover in Niger. The acting Controller General of Customs, Bashir Adeniyi, recently announced that current situation in Niger warranted the developments. According to the International Trade Center, imports and exports between Nigeria and Niger in 2022 totaled $226.34 million. Nigeria imported $33.4 million worth of goods and exported goods worth $192.91 million to Niger. In 2019, Nigeria closed its border with Niger and other neighboring countries. Trade between the two countries fell by 78.76% to $18.27 million in 2020 from $85.9 million as of the end of 2019. In another development, inadequate funding, insecurity, illegal mining, smuggling, weak value addition to low level of mining mechanization has been attributed to the slow growth in the mining sector in Nigeria. With an estimated $700 billion in commercially viable minerals, key player says Nigeria possesses the capacity to diversify its revenue sources and boost foreign exchange earnings by prioritizing the sector. With business news, Alika Opanachi, Arua.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business news package. Coming up next, newspaper review.
Right, time to take a look at the daily newspapers on newspaper review. All right, of course, Chukwudo Kudubaja is here.
Hello, Claire. How are you today?
Very well.
Good to see you. Kingsley.
Morning, and good to see you too.
You're jerking those newspapers as if you're preparing for UTME. Good to see you, Kingsley.
That's right. All right, let's begin. We have some 4 newspapers with us this morning. Let's begin by taking a look at the window page of the Punch newspaper. Above the name flag, you have the following headlines. Labour rejects Wajabiamila on subsidy negotiations, writes National Assembly. 120 billion naira debt, banks offer telcos repayment plan. Tinubu, Sanwo-Olu church members mourn as Pastor Odukoya dies. Taiwo Odukoya was passed away at the age of 67. And the late story comes with a kicker. Niger. ECOWAS plans fresh sanctions on Burkina Faso and Mali, and UN talks fail. ECOWAS leaders meet Thursday after botched AU, UN and US planned visit to Niamey. Over 100,000 IDPs stranded in Niger, businesses grounded in Sokoto and Katsina borders. Tinubu sets 30-day tax reform target. UI student makes panel. And troops rescue 9 kidnapped victims, kill 10 bandits. Vandals steal Abuja-Kaduna rail line communication and signal equipment. Vandals steal Abuja-Kaduna rail line communication and signal equipment. 35 MDAs shun reps job racketeering probe. Details on page 7. And very quickly, also from the Nation newspaper above the nameplate, we'll take the following headline. It says, APC defends president's choice of ministers. Southeast 6 more slots. Resident doctors to end strike. Parley with government raises hope. WTO to boost digital trade. And job racketeering victims at House of Reps. CBN hits Niger Republic junta with sanctions. ACF opposes economic blockade. Military denies top U.S. diplomat access. That's the military in Niger Republic. And federal government begins tax reform to end 20 trillion naira yearly tax losses. Tinubu sets 18% 3-year tax to GDP target for panel. President, no more excessive borrowing. Stiff penalty likely for tax evasion. Pope cautions on dangers of artificial intelligence. Page 27. Claire.
Yeah, we got New Telegraph and Leadership newspaper. Sharp strike. Nigerians dying can't care for themselves. The SFG enemy beg resident doctors. Front page of the New Telegraph. Doctors' body urges speedy conflict resolution. North cancels planned national protest as Senate intervenes. Funding FG to secure schools with 144.8 billion naira 3-year investment plan. Labor to NAS, sacrifice for Nigerians' survival, cut down on your earnings. Labor to NAS, National Assembly, sacrifice for Nigerians' survival, cut down on your earnings. Will make laws to alleviate sovereign Sekbabio. Tinubu vows to end cycle of borrowing for public spendings, sets 18% tax to GDP ratio target in 3 years. And Niger, just there, ECOWAS issued 7-day ultimatum, not Nigeria, Tinubu. Now orders CBN to sanction entities, individuals with links to coupists, and to host regional meeting tomorrow. Stop fighting proxy war for Western countries. ACF tells ECOWAS, FG, once sanctions lifted, and OPS lists implications of military option and sanctions. Okay, let's just to go a little below the nameplate. There are other stories trending just there. 9 ex-governors emerge chairman as Akpabio unveils standing committees. And Tinubu meets Okonjo-Iweala. 6 ways to address hardship in Nigeria. Sanwo-Olu, Lagos seeking 10-year, $10 billion power funding. And East-West Road, strategic for Niger Delta development, Oborewori. And Fountain of Life Pastor Taiwo Odukoya dies at 67. And also there, Dr. Odeaso, who died in Lagos Hospital, laid to rest. Standing story above the nameplate, USDD respite as CBN intervenes in banks 150 billion naira debt to telecoms, and naira depreciates to 900 per dollar at parallel market. And quickly, leadership newspaper. Niger coup linked individuals, entities slammed with new sanctions, just trending there. And this very important story, maize shortage. Nigeria's 4.2 billion naira poultry sector on brink of collapse. And you'll have very detailed analysis of this sector right there. 25 million, the sector's crisis puts over 25 million jobs at risk. Maize production declined from 12.5 million metric tons in 2019 to 12 million. And of course, a crate of eggs now selling between 2,400 naira per crate and 2,600 naira against earlier 1,900 naira. Now, an average selling of 2 crates of 2 eggs contains 82% of daily vitamin D requirements. And finally here, 600 poultry farms may close shop in Delta State, and that's about 62%. Okay, let's quickly, again, all other stories I'd read out earlier on. And 19 countries to benefit from ECOWAS $338.7 million off-grid electricity project. All right, Kingsley.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking, where else would you take the reeling out of headlines to by passing the baton to Kingsley? Shell strike, Nigerians are dying, can't care for themselves. Doctors' body urges speedy resolution. National Association of Resident Doctors, that's NARD, cancels planned protests as Senate intervenes. And I want to say that that's the segment, the last segment, the rider there. That's what I find attractive. Now, what irks some of these professional unions or trade groups is being ignored into continuing protests or strikes. So it's all eyes on the Senate to see what reconciliation of grievances could happen. That's what I want to think. No profession is inferior to another, to any other, but when resident doctors go on strike, public health institutions, which are comparatively cheaper avenues to procuring medical attention, of course, are knocked out of action. You are saying, by implication, that the poorest of the poor can't get attention anymore, since most private hospitals are a no-go area in terms of the fees they charge. But the most aching aspect of it is what urgent medical procedures get abandoned, leading to preventable deaths. It is not palatable at all. On a personal level, I received an SMS from National Hospital 2 days ago that to the effect that what we needed to do at the radiology unit, a special scan for somebody who is going to need what is called urethroplasty. That's a repair of the urethra, that we couldn't come to do it anymore. Now think what would happen to that person who is still in trauma. I mean, matrons are going to try. Their experience comes in handy in terms of what they can do in ICU, we know. But doctors are doctors. So it is not easy going at all for anybody. I pray that this will be resolved as quickly as possible. The second one here, ECOWAS issued a 7-day ultimatum, not Nigeria. Now, this clarification probably stems from the impression that Nigeria is the arrowhead of the quick notice to coupists in Niamey. But the truth is that men and materials supplied when West Africa decides to take on a recalcitrant member do get supplied by Nigeria mostly. ECOMOG easily comes to mind. Financing and other things. Who really handles then when West Africa, finds itself in a logjam, it is Nigeria.
Yes, okay, Chukudi,
yes.
We must not forget that ECOWAS is a supranational institution, and the decision makers are the heads of states and authority of those countries, not just one individual. Nigeria may play a very significant role, but when decisions are taken that affect a member country, it is a collective decision. That is, yes. So it is not. There was need for that clarification because, it was announced by the chairman, who happened to be our own president. So everybody is alluding to the fact,
I like your further clarification, but when push comes to shove, at the end of the day, Nigeria really... I watched an interview granted by former military man, Body George, where he says, please, Jojo, don't war. War ain't good. No, and he talked about the heavy load Nigeria will bear when it happens. No. So by implication,
I agree.
We are just talking about administration.
Yes, I have agreed. And those who link President Tinubu as Nigerian president, sanctioned Niger.
That's odious personalization.
Exactly.
Odious personalization.
It's not, and that is why this clarification is very important.
Okay,
this
fine.
is ECOWAS, not Nigerian president.
Okay, that's a point there. Yes. That's a point. A very good one.
Yes, and I don't know, Kingsley, you've got something to talk about? Because I wanted us to look at this issue of poultry sector,
Well, before we get into the poultry sector, I should also draw attention to some of the gaps that we'll find these days in some of the reports that we get. It's either a function of the statements that they got or that there was no additional legwork by the journalists. I'm talking about the Tax Reform Committee that was inaugurated yesterday by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Surprisingly, a 400-level student at the University of Ibadan is one of the members of the committee. She's said to be president of Tax Students Initiative, some such body. There are two basic things that you can actually incorporate in a story of this nature. One, what is the size of the committee? How many members are on the committee? I tried to look at the photograph on the front page of the Punch newspaper and count the heads. And then, of course, the president and the vice president are also there, about 30-something. But you read the stories that I've read online and also in hard copy, you can find it's just sufficient for you to say, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday inaugurated a 30-member tax reform committee. And then who are the members of the committee? This is particularly important. You can see the faces. It's not all the faces that you can recognize. There may be persons who may have issues with some of the nominees. There may be persons, I don't know, of course, the presumption is that there was due diligence in the choice and nomination of the persons. You have a broad spectrum of economists, accountants, tax experts, lawyers.
You still need to know.
You need to know. And early on, if you remember, when the chairman was announced, there was no membership. It was just the chairman. This was some weeks ago. So I'm just saying for reportorial purposes, because there will be writers who may want to make comments and so on and so forth, and they have no additional information. Yes, the mandate of the committee is clear from what the president said yesterday, and the goals are also clear. But let's get to know who is doing this and who is doing well, because it's also important. You never can tell what the points of analysis would emerge from.
All right, we're going to round off. I wanted us to talk about this issue of poultry and the poultry sector being on the brink of collapse and rising cost of eggs. Eggs. Chukudi, are you here?
What about the layers themselves?
Eggs. Maize.
If you cut, it's an all-round thing, really. It's an all-round thing. I don't know whether to blame it on inflation, we easily run to, look, the people who are now handling these things are so few when it comes to pure agricultural products because of the insurgency, the banditry in the north. the country is starving. But poultry, yes, Jos, for instance, Plateau State, does have a good input. I mean, they really give us a lot of output into the poultry, area of our food arrangement, whatever one will call that. But I don't think that it is purely the banditry or the insurgency thing. I think when you engage analysis, those who know more should talk about it. They are saying we're not eating eggs anymore. That's not fair.
I think that there are issues first with grain production, and maize, of course, is affected. Maize being one of the chief ingredients for the production of livestock feeds. If you recall, one of the measures that the president announced to alleviate the challenges arising from the implementation of removal of fuel subsidy, as well as the merger of forex windows, was for the release of several tons of grains, including maize, to farmers and then to other users. Bone meal is part of it. So what is it that we've been doing around our poultry industry? It didn't just start today. I'm seeing the stories now. A couple of weeks ago, we went to some of the supermarkets, you couldn't find eggs. The shelves were dry, but the shelves got restocked, and I think in some of six egg crates, those ones will be going for, I think, about 600 something, if not 700 now. And this is what you used to get for about 200 naira or thereabouts.
And they come like a tennis ball. Chukwudi, you don't have more time.
We have to play to nature this time around. Part of what happened to maize last year was the early cessation of the rains. We pray that it gets into October, this part of the country.
I believe it because you are a farmer.
Sorry, yeah, I mean, listen, you should have them in your silos. So these weather patterns shouldn't
next level
be an excuse, or you have irrigation, not to depend on
dry season farming.
Yeah, rain-fed agriculture. So dry season year round. I don't know how many crops of maize can be cultivated in a year. How many cycles of cultivation you can have, but at least you should more than one. Because rice, they do sometimes 3. So when you cultivate, you harvest, you groom, you harvest. And then, of course, you go to store.
Storage as well.
So when there's a problem, you release.
Gentlemen, all right, let's Chukwudi.
Claire?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I like your colors.
Yes, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Here too.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Don't go away. We'll just take a quick short break. When we come back, we'll begin our conversations.
And after about 2 months of expectations and weeks of speculations, the president eventually submitted a list of 48 nominees in 3 batches to the Senate for screening and confirmation. The list consisted of some former governors, technocrats, and politicians drawn from across the country and from various professional backgrounds. All nominees appeared before the Senate and were scrutinized, except for Dr. Mariam Shete from Kano, whose nomination was withdrawn and she was replaced. While others took a bow after being engaged on various issues, others simply took a bow based on legislative privilege extended to them. For others, their past came back to haunt them as they were referred to certain conducts in the past for which they had to tender formal apologies. Bosun Tijani from Ogun State expressed remorse for his numerous tweets supporting the NSAS protests and directing some to the National Assembly, while former Minister of State for Labor and Employment apologized to the Senate over misunderstanding between his office and the 9th Assembly.
For the misunderstanding that arose between us in my committee at that time at the 9th Assembly, I apologize without reservation.
At the end of the screening, 45 out of President Bola Tinubu's 48 nominees were confirmed by the Senate. Senate President Godswill Akpabio said the other 3, former Kaduna State Governor Nasser El-Rufai, Stella Okititi from Delta State, and Abubakar Sani Danladi from Taraba State, are still undergoing security clearance. while they are yet to be assigned portfolios, Nigerians expect round pegs to be placed in round holes to effectively steer the renewed hope agenda of the president. On Good Morning Nigeria, guests will take a look at the composition of Tinubu's cabinet and what it portends for Africa's largest democracy.
All right, I think so far we have about 48 members of the cabinet screened by the National Assembly. And so to discuss the topic composition of President Tinubu's cabinet, let me welcome for the first time in our studios here in Abuja, Dr. Osaoro Okonzwa. He's a public affairs analyst. We're very glad to have you.
Glad to be here, thank you. Glad to see you all.
Also here in our studios in Abuja, we have the Honorable Shehu Saleh Hassan, former member, House of Representatives. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, and then also here with us in the studios is a lawyer and public affairs analyst, Abdullahi Ibrahim Jallo. Ibrahim Jallo, we're glad to have you this morning.
Welcome, viewers, and welcome, presenters.
And with us via Zoom from Osogbo in Osun State, a regular on Good Morning Nigeria, Ezenwa Nwago. Ezenwa, we're glad to have you this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, gentlemen, we're glad to have you this morning. It's an all-male cast in terms of the composition of our guests. That might have been a very serious issue, assuming President Tinubu did not nominate any female from amongst the 48 nominees that were sent to the National Assembly for vetting and ultimate confirmation. But let's just begin. The National Assembly, more particularly the Senate, as the Constitution mandates, has already screened and confirmed 45. 3 of them are outstanding. Let's have your initial comments. First, on the mix of the nominees, and then later on we'll talk about the procedure adopted by the Senate in the confirmation hearings. Let's begin with Honorable Saleh Hassan, a former member of the House of Reps.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I think the first of all, the process of nomination and screening and confirmation, which is in conformity with the Constitution, as you have rightly said. The Senate did a very, well, he did ask me to speak on the composition. And I think there's the composition has, first of all, met the constitutional requirement. Section 147, I believe, 3, states that there shall be a minister from each state of the Federation, at least one from each state. And I think we have we have a reflection of that. The President really met the requirement of constitutional requirement in providing at least one, in nominating at least one senator from each state of the Federation. And the Senate screened all the 48, confirmed 45. And they have cited a security clearance as the reason for not confirming the 3. And I think the 3 within 21 working days after presentation of the nominees. So they have to either write to the President that so person, in this case 3, the 2 gentlemen and the lady who have not been confirmed, they can write to the President and tell the President that they have not been confirmed. But there's also a provision in the Constitution that in the event, and I think it's 147.405, I think, that states that in the event that the Senate is silent on the confirmation of those 3 for 21 days, the Constitution deems that they have been confirmed as ministers, and they can, and the President can go ahead and assign portfolios to them. So we'll await to see. I mean, the which means, in essence, I'm not a lawyer, but as a legislator, I'm expected to know that What that essentially means is that it saves the Senate having to come back and confirm them again. So if they have been cleared, if they've gone successfully through the security clearance, as it is being done now, then there is no need to communicate further to the Senate. The Constitution deems that they have been confirmed as ministers of the Federal Republic, and I'm sure a barrister here can confirm that. And the President can go ahead and assign portfolios to those three. And for the procedure, I think I am quite satisfied with the procedure.
Hassan, I thank you very much again, and I just would like you to educate us the more, or better, as well as the viewer. I just want you to talk us through the quality of the exercise of the responsibility of screening conferred on, the Senate. What exactly are they screening?
Well, first of all,
because what we see is just you come, you tell us your educational background, you tell us your family background. In some cases, you just take a bow and go. And so talk to us about the quality of that responsibility.
I think let's just put things into a little bit of context here. I think we need to know why what the Constitution contemplates by providing that they go through the screening by the people. In this case, the representatives of the people, particularly the Senate. Now, it's not the job of the Senate to actually, but it is expected that they do that. But the quality of the minister...
It's not the job of the Senate.
It is the job of the Senate to confirm the nominee. First of all, it is expected that the Senate must confirm that the nominee meets the constitutional requirement to become a minister of the Federal Republic. And what is that requirement? The Constitution says, provides that a minister or a Nigerian shall not be appointed to the position of a minister until and unless the person qualifies to be the member of the House of Representatives. In other words, it's the same qualification to seek election into the House of Representatives. That is the requirement.
But very quickly, yes. Honorable Saleh, let's correct that. Thanks a lot for the points that you have raised. I know that this issue came up. It used to be the case that for you to become a commissioner in a state, that's a member of a state executive council or a minister of the Federal Republic, you have to satisfy the constitutional requirement of eligibility to be a member of the House of Reps. And one provision in the Constitution states that you cannot become a member of the House of Reps unless you have contested and won an election. And one criterion for contesting an election is that you belong to a political party. There was a subsequent amendment to the Constitution that eliminated that provision. Yes. That's right. Okay. So, Okozua, let's have your take on this. The Senate has screened 48, 3 of them are outstanding. 5 points that Saleh has raised, 45 of them have been cleared. What's your thought?
Then let's see how they're going to perform. And then talking about the composition, I have not actually checked that, but I think we have a very good quota of women, but it's still a bit short. It's still a bit short. It's still a bit short of 1/3. Which the Beijing Declaration will have enjoined and so on. So I think we have a long way to go in that regard. Then the quarrel some people also have with it is the Southeast, vis-a-vis other geopolitical regions, is apparently shortchanged. We have a minimum of 1 per state, and because we have just 5 states in the Southeast, we have 5 ministers, whereas a particular state in the Southwest has a quota of 3.
That is Ogun State.
Well,
Ogun, I mean, it's there. It's there. And the president doesn't come from Ogun State. Yes, it doesn't. So
it's a good thing representations are being made to the president, at least that's what we have been told, going by media reports, that probably should be looked into. Yes, the model of compensation, those who made it possible for the current governing party to come into power will have to be rewarded. And it's also true, just like Honorable Member said, that the minimum constitutional requirement has been met, the minister per state. But beyond compensation, beyond power politics, I think for the sake of national integrity and national morale, the section of the country must be given good cause to believe that it will live long.
Okay, let's of course bring in Jalo here to also make your own contribution. What's your impression about the Constitution? Let's look at the number, for instance. We're having 45, I think, at the moment, but I think they're about 48 in number.
Well, you have raised two questions, both of you, which I will rescue my colleagues. One, the issue of the composition. In politics, generally, you reward somebody who has assisted you. We know the president has said sometimes he may not have minister of states, but the volume of people that make him to become the president are many. And I'm not running away from what you are saying, that the number of women are 9, compare it with what has happened.
I've not even come to that.
I'm coming.
You're fast forwarding our question. We'll talk about the model. I just want you to speak. I just want you to speak. Let us look at the composition now in terms of numbers.
Look at it. The composition, in politics, particularly the president, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who became a president from when from the time he contested governorship. He was a governor before, and then suddenly God gives him to become the president. So, and in Lagos, so you can see, the terrain of politics, and he has been in politics for quite some time. And look at his background when he was in Lagos. From the way he behaved, he assisted or he rewarded all those that have helped him to become what made him to become the governor of Lagos State. And the same thing he's doing now. You don't go and bring somebody who has not done anything for you in terms of your success, that you can now say, I'm going to nominate you to become the minister. Obviously, that is not in politics. In the general perception in politics, when somebody has done much for you, you too is expected to do much for him. That is the composition. Making the...
To whom much is given, much is expected.
Yes,
is that it?
Exactly. That is it.
Is that the language?
That is it. So he has brought about 48, now 43 have been screened, 45 have been screened. Then the remaining, as he said, by the provision of Section 147 of Section 6. And then he has equally said that within 21 days, if those that have been left behind have not been cleared, then it is assumed they have been screened as ministers. In any case, what we expect the minister to do, the president to do, is now to assign them portfolios. And the rigorous procedure they have followed in the time when the screening was going on. You can agree with me, one of my lecturers, Professor Tahir, he has started from his primary school up to the level where he is as the Vice Chancellor. And you can equally see the son of Prince Audu, how he was rigorously asked various type of questions. In fact, I have a classmate, Ubamegari. When we met, he said, the Senate have asked me various, Ubamegari was my classmate, we did the degree together, law school together. So, in fact, the efforts of the Senate in terms of rigorous questions is commendable. Compared you are Nigerians and then reputable presenters compared to the former ministers during the Buhari's regime, We have seen how one can come and bow down, and then he can just pass. But this time around, under the leadership of Opabio in this, and they have done very, very good job. It's a thorough job, but you know, in any type of contents, there is always going to be some reservation. Maybe you have been nominated as a minister simply because I don't like your face. I would be raising a lot of questions. But the 10th National Assembly, under the leadership of Fabio, is commendable anyway.
All right, thank you very much, Jalo, for the comments that you have made. Let's bring in now Ezenwa Wagu. Ezenwa, you're still with us via Zoom from Oshogbo. I remember that you were here in the Abuja studios when we've had a conversation around the list that the President Tinubu at the time forwarded to the, just before he forwarded the list, I think, that's when we had a conversation, forwarded the list to the Senate. So, 48 went in, 45 are out. What are your impressions in general, once again, of the list and the process that brought about the confirmation of 45 of the nominees?
Well, thank you, Oga, as I always call you. I think that we've gone through this ritual. At the end of the day, like has been said, I think that almost all of them will be confirmed. Security clearance is not something that we know. It's something that is behind the scene, and that doesn't. But at the end of the day, I think that we're going to have the 48 ministers. And what has always bothered me really has not been who is nominated or the composition. I've always tried to shy away from discussing composition, and the reason is because being a student of history and sociology and politics, not a very good one, but the little I know has taught me that it's not about who has been appointed and the make, because these experiences are not new. We've come more than 20 years into this new experience, and we have had different kind of people appointed ministers. The platform on which they operate will determine whether they fulfill the aspirations of people. But just to answer your question, I think that at least President Bola Tinubu has shifted the needle a bit in terms of gender sensibility. He's brought in about 9 women. That's important because that was a sore point for the past administration in terms of the composition, in terms of its whether it was how do I say it now, whether they were gender sensitive in the sense in which we have seen President Bola got it. And then for age, like you said in your opener, the youngest being 36 and the oldest being 68 is a balance in terms of experience and youth, which the mix of it is what you need to move things forward. You need experience, you need the energy of young people, and all of that being in the
Okay, well, sorry for the glitch there. We hope to reconnect with Ezenwa Wagu again from Oshogbo once that is clear. All right. Ezenwa, okay, please go ahead.
We will have to move beyond.
All right, sorry about that. We'll continue to try. Our engineers will continue to try and see if we can get a better reception from Ezenwa. But let me come back to the studio. Dr. Okonzwa, Ezenwa had just talked about, the different components, of the cabinet in terms of age and in terms of gender. Yes, indeed, the middle, when it comes to issue of gender, there's an improvement. There's a slight improvement, but that's not to say that the issue of 35%. It's been there. It's been there. So okay, let me just move away from that. There's been an improvement, fine, but let's look at the size of the portfolio of the cabinet. There were speculations of an issue that there could be merging of MDAs, ministries, in line with some of those reports, Rosanye's reports and all that. And others have also called for a cut down in the cost of governance. How do you synthesize the size of the cabinet and these expectations?
I'll resolve it this way, that government is not a business proposition. And the way Nigeria is today, with the whole array of problems besetting the nation, I think we need many more men and women to get it done. Of course, the Buhari administration is part of our history now, but if we're going to look at a situation where a Superman was given 3 ministries at a time, and then some other people were ministers of state, with all the complaints and redundancy that brought and so on, I think it's better to actually expand it the way it is. A lot of issues need to be addressed, and we need a very large, competent team to actually confront it. And I really don't think having a small government, forget about what I might be seeing in other parts of the world, a slim government and so on. We are a developing country, and we have a lot of problems. So we need people to actually laser focus on what our issues are. And of course, the barrister talked about compensating those who helped him to become president. And it's all politics. This is not pure economics now. So let us see what the agenda is going to be ultimately. Let us see how the portfolio will be assigned. And the men and women should go to work. For the quantum of female appointments.
You said this is all politics, not governance.
It's governance, it's politics, of course. Politics and governance cannot be separated. They couldn't be. Though one leads to the other, but they are fused ultimately. You really have to satisfy the broad spread of the Nigerian nation, really. And that's not an economic matter. It's not. It's not this thing you bring about all those cost effectiveness, efficiency, and so on. To govern a nation is more complex than that. And having a cabinet of 48, 45 yet.
And the rules are different. The governance rules.
No, you see, the issue is
different from political rules.
Even professionally, this is not the largest we have had. In the Second Republic, for instance, we had 19 states then. But President Shagari had about 36 ministers. Minister for, minister of. You must remember that. So, if we remember that, if out of 19 states we had...
the context we are evaluating this is because of the economic situation and, the living condition of the people and the demands and expectation of Nigerians. And I'm just asking, from your perspectives, and which you are saying there's nothing wrong with it. You're saying there's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong.
Yes, I just want you to explain, and clarify for us.
Yes.
From your perspective.
See, when a government is well inspired and well motivated, is able to solve the problems of society and a country, and you need, so long as you can afford them, you need the manpower. Actually, it's actually when you have paucity or lack of resources, we talk about how many men you are going to have. Because what will take one man to do in 10 days, 10 men will do in a day, for instance. And if it comes to that, we are probably buying time and the rest of it. And the government itself, with the ministers you are appointing and so on, with the SSAs you are going to bring, you are also creating employment indirectly. So the government, any part of the world, not just our country, cannot be assessed on pure economic models. No, I think that will be misleading altogether.
Okay, Dr. Osawaro, thank you very much. Honorable Saleh Hassan, I'm coming to you to follow up on what Dr. Osawaro is saying. I mean, to him, you heard him, it's less of economics and more of politics and governance and our circumstance and situation. What is your reaction?
Well, I think it's actually both are inextricable. You can hardly take out politics from the politics, and largely, I think the political economy should, only to a certain extent, be determined by the costs. But I think I would like to agree with Doctor regarding the size. The fewer men or fewer ministry does not necessarily, may not necessarily mean reduce the cost of governance. Well, there could be financial cost that may not necessarily be reduced, and there would be material cost and also the cost of inefficiency, as the doctor has rightly, because you have to put a cost to inefficiency. The more people you have does not equally, in the same token, and this may sound a little counterintuitive, but more people does not equally guarantee that we're going to have the requisite efficiency. But I think the quality of attention of the head of state or the head of government with whom the ministers are expected to work within the provisions of the law will to a large extent determine the success of the ministers. And I think 47 or 48 would actually not make a considerable financial difference in terms of the cost of running government, whether you make them just 36, that is representing one from each state, or you make them 48 as the president wishes. And this is his prerogative. He looks at the weight and the extent of the political, social and economic problems that we are facing, and makes a determination as to the number of people that he would want to have to assist him in carrying out his duties as the president. And as the case is now, he forwarded the name of 48 members. And looking at the quality, I think for the first time, most Nigerians, no matter how we do enjoy giving a critique all the time, and even those critics have come to realize that yes, I think he took his time and made some very good choices. We may not agree with the choices, with the composition, and I think clearly you're not really satisfied with the 9 nominations. Neither am I. I am an advocate of equal opportunity, not necessarily the 35% affirmative. I think equal opportunity here means that equal number of women are given opportunity to serve their nation as is given to men. But one problem that I have, there's a particular phrase that I have which politicians use. Not only politicians, but even Barrister has alluded to that. He's a politician. Exactly. I have the problem with the phrase people being rewarded. I think it is people being recognized and given the privilege to serve their fatherland. When you say reward, an average person assumes that the appointment or nomination comes with huge material and financial benefits. And that is what the people are looking for. I think it's the reward, not the reward, but the recognition that you are given for your effort to bring in the government into power. You are given recognition and therefore conferred with a privilege that we all covet, to serve our fatherland in the highest levels. I think this is what I agree with. I would rather... But
even in some occasions you hear that, oh, this is a call to service.
Exactly.
And we know what service means.
Yes. Well, I think service, we should begin to take these appointments and these roles very seriously. And I think the more we give the right tag or ascription to the services we render our fatherland, the more seriously we will actually discharge these duties, and the perception of Nigerians would be affected so effectively. So I think it's a privilege. And back to the I do not want to take us really back, but it is very important that Nigerians understand that the democratic process does not in any way make it even possible to marginalize any of us. because of the processes and provisions of and the tenets of democracy. One, there's the National Assembly that not only oversights but supervises the executive as well. Or in other words, there are separation of powers that sometimes overlap, but of course the National Assembly is empowered to supervise the executive. Two, each state is represented in the Federal Executive Council, each state. So I think issue of marginalization, we hear it when it is.
I'm sure you must have heard.
Of course, I have.
About the grievances of a particular ethnic tribe from Delta State. I'm sure you must have heard.
I have.
Yes. They allege they have been marginalized in terms of, you know, the ministerial nomination. Okay. You know, all the nominees they allege were, you know, taken from a particular, you know, ethnic tribe. Is that not part of marginalization? But that's not what we are talking about.
Yes.
I think we should give Jalo and Ezewa
some time to contribute.
Yes. I think that it's important. Let's throw this in, Barrister Jalo. Indigents of the Federal Capital Territory are excited by the fact of a first-time appearance of one of them as now a minister designate of the Federal Republic. Curiously, we also remember that during the First Republic, Yaradua, the father of late President Yaradua, was the Minister of Lagos. But they campaigned by the indigents for greater recognition and representation. Is this one now that will be satiated by the appointment of one of them as a minister of the Federal Republic?
Well, Kingsley, you are a lawyer, you know, we look at things how they are. If you critically look at the behavior of the president, maybe he's going to make zonal ministers, just as what the doctor has said during Shagari's era. That makes the composition large. And the person that has been nominated, former chairman, is Uzalo, or Izalo, his name. You know, they have been clamoring for this position long ago. And the territory, the Federal Capital Territory, has an indigence. And you remember quite clearly the controversy that came up about the way and manner Tinubu got the votes and whatever. So for this type of things that came up politically and the effort they have put, you don't divorce it from the fact that they have been getting ministers in the Federal Capital Territory before. And one of them that has just passed, and whatever that has happened, for them to be carried alone, at least now they have gotten, the Constitution has recognized them as a state, since it is a Federal Capital Territory. So giving them a position of a minister is just like what you read constitutionally, the Ishakiri struggle constitutionally, that they have been marginalized, and what you were saying. Constitutionally, it's a primary school, it's an elementary law position. That Tinubu style of governance, you will look at it critically. Partially, he has not dominated it with only APC. There are PDP, Wike is there. In fact, for this country to be unified, as the Honorable Saleh said, every segment of the country must be carried along. And now that contention has been divorced by coming of Tinubu now, we now agree that what has happened during Buhari, the minimal number of women has been increased. And young men that are clamoring for the right bill to contest and whatever, there are about 90. Tijani is there, the son of, so many from Oshun, so many of them. So you see the style of this administration is making effort to carry alone all the parts of this country. He has brought former governors, former senators, and young men have been carried along in a large number, about 9 or 10. And women, they have dominated the scene, about 9 of them.
I know you want to drag me into this conversation.
So you see, honestly, if we are going to be fair to Tinubu, we are not saying that they are in a perfect direction since the government is just coming on board. We now wait to see how he can assign the portfolios and then the capable hands that can be posted to the required places. At least our expectation is he should try and take the ministers based on their right places.
All right, Barrister Jallo, thank you. And I must appreciate, personally, and on behalf of the women, we must appreciate the president. Yes, the youngest of the minister nominees is a lady. That's Dr. Betta. And of course, we have very intelligent young ladies, among the ministerial nominees. Musawa is there, she's about 40-something. Kotete is also there, 39. But she's not been clear. These are highly intelligent young ladies, So, and I don't think it's, their nomination was not because they worked or because they were politicians, but I think they also have, what it takes to also be among the list. But let me bring in Ezenwa, if Ezenwa is still with us. Ezenwa, you're smiling. Okay, so looking at, again, the metrics, we have about 29 politicians against 20, is it, how many politicians down? I can't remember, but I know there are 21 technocrats, and you have, 9 females, you have men, young men and women. If you look at all these metrics, does it help to give us an idea of where Mr. President is heading to in terms of economic and, political strategies?
Well, Claire, the point that for me is that needs to be made is that what we've had is both recognition and reward. Nobody wrote exams among those people to be minister. There are different other currents that lead to those nominations. Sometimes very extraneous influence is also coming into how people become. So I don't this compartmentalization that we're doing about technocrats, about politicians, about all of those. For instance, the young lady you talked about, Betta, Dr. Betta, she's a medical doctor. So she was also national woman leader of the APC. So she's a politician, but she's also a technocrat. The most important thing is that if you are nominated, you are either nominated because you're a politician, or somebody who is a politician recommended you, or somebody who contributed to the process recommended you. If it was a merit-based process where you say, okay, people can apply and then write examination, then we can begin to get into most of this. Purely is an issue of patronage, and somebody is being rewarded. Recognition comes when, for instance, you have invented something and through your invention, on the basis of what you invented, you are brought in to come and, but that's not what we see in our country. These three processes are the direct processes. Nomination because you contributed, or somebody contributed on your behalf, or people who financially contributed nominated you. Those are what is at play. And so the pretense to the contrary is perhaps being nice. We want to nice up the conversation. And that for me is where the challenge is. The challenge is that this is the way people become in Nigeria. And if that is the way it becomes, we need to set up a new system of engaging those people. If you look at past governments, the challenge has been the absence of service delivery outcomes, value for money, and citizen oversight in terms of to make sure that these people perform. Because at the end of the day, what are they coming to do? Whether they are 48, they are 45, they are 36, what are they coming to do? What they are coming to do, is it known to all of us that this minister, this is what he is going to do in 6 months. This is what he's going to do, she is going to do in 1 year. And on the basis of that, as citizen groups and organizations, we can say, okay, this is what we know you were supposed to do. But most of this is shrouded in the idea of what the president wants the person to do. We don't know what that president wants the person to do. We have had ministers of housing, ministers of transportation, ministers. Where are we on those things? We need to begin to talk about service delivery outcomes and then value for money. If you put 1 million into a process, it is to say, okay, this 1 million, this is what my expectation is. In education, I expect that we will do so and so and so and so within 1 year. And this is the amount of money that we're going to put to that. And whether the person is a technocrat or a politician or a priest or an imam or whatever the person is, there is something we know that person will be doing for us in 1 year. And that for me is where we should push this conversation and every other conversation around governance in the next 4 years. Because what has happened is that we have no accountability mechanism to ensure that people who are appointed into positions deliver on what they have been appointed for, and that what that thing that they've been appointed for is made known to everybody. If you are made Minister of Health, are you going to continue to purchase drugs, or you are going to get into preventive medicine? And how will you do that? That conversation needs to be public. It needs to be engaged by everyone. If you are Minister of Education, what are you going to do for public education? What are you going to do to increase enrollment of out of school children and the rest of them? We can say, okay, within the next one year, we're going to reduce this to this number. And I think that is helpful for us in terms of, but technocrat, politician, all of those things, you don't get into government because you wrote the examination. It is some kind of patronage. So when Honorable was talking about whether it's recognition or reward, it's a mix of both. You are recognized because you contributed in the fight to elect somebody into government. Otherwise, there are professors of medicine. The best professors of medicine are not in this ministerial list. The best aeronautical engineers are not in this ministerial list. The people who are there may not necessarily be the best. They are recommended by people who play the role, one role or the other. If another party had won the election, the names that you are seeing now may not necessarily be the ones that will make that list. So it just shows you that it's more about accountability, more about citizen oversight, more about engagement, and more about putting the scorecard and making it available for everybody to interrogate and engage within a period.
All right, Ezewa Nwangu, thank you very much there for the points that you have raised, and again for seeking to refocus attention to what you described as service delivery outcomes and value for money. But just to note in parentheses that when you say there is no accountability mechanism, I'm sure there are some persons who are more familiar with the system who will most likely disagree with you. I'm saying this, for instance, when Shamsuddin Usman was Minister of National Planning, and Michael Giadume was Chief of Staff to the President. They came up with KPIs, the whole idea of KPIs. That's key performance indicators. And that was also carried forward into the Buhari administration. When after a retreat, KPIs were of course equally developed, and each of them had to report, each of the ministers and ministries had to report back on a periodic basis. But how much of public access to that, I think that will be a concern to focus on sometime in the future. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
All right, welcome back, and you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live from our studio in Abuja. Quite interesting conversation going on, and you don't want to hear what we've been discussing off camera, but it's equally enlightening, to know. Dr. Of course, Okonzua here, Honorable Hassan and Barrister Jalu, Ezenwa in joining us from Oshogbo, also making very interesting contributions. Now, I'd just like to ask the same question I asked Ezenwa, but what I wanted to, clarify, I'll begin with Dr. Konzwa, is given members, these nominees now, what we have now, in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of profession, whether politician, whether by reward or recognition, whatever. But what we have right now, does it give us a sense of understanding of the policy direction, policy thrust of this administration?
Yes, the theme is intergenerational, and ultimately the criterion would be, does the cabinet represent Nigeria? In Nigeria, you have young people. In fact, young people are in the majority, and we have said the youngest member, coincidentally, is a lady. We have professionals. So these are different sectors of the country, and all of them meet or have met the minimum requirement. Otherwise, the Senate would have told us so. So we now wait for them to be assigned their portfolios and see how their performance will be. And of course, the technical expertise is not supposed to come from them entirely. It's the policy direction we expect from them. Because we have a bureaucracy, from the permanent secretary in every MDA to the lowliest person, say a clerk in the bureaucracy. They are all supposed to support the policy direction of the new president. It's the president that actually has the mandate. The ministers are simply his agents in different MDAs. So they convey the policy thrust of the government to the different MDAs, and the bureaucracy is supposed to be there to interpret and implement, so long as the resources are there. So the division of labor is also there. We don't talk about the bureaucracy very often, but they are also a very powerful force. So we do hope that the ministers, whenever they are assigned their portfolios, will be able to ginger the bureaucracy they are going to inherit, will be able to align whatever they are going to meet with the aspirations they are pursuing.
You know what I'm asking? Because again, let me take the gender nominees for instance. You have a lawyer, you have a well-qualified doctor, you have Okotete who is also there. These are not just, women that you just, I don't want to dump in one, women affairs ministry. Or these are women who come with some form of, a value addition.
I'm sorry, Claire, let me throw this in, because I've said it on Good Morning Nigeria. Since 2010, in the Federal Republic of Nigeria, women have headed the Federal Ministry of Finance.
Absolutely. How many other places have they headed?
No, I'm sorry, Ministry of
It's just Ministry of Finance. It's just Ministry of Finance.
Critical MDA.
No, it's just Ministry of Finance, Kingsley. You keep saying that. You just
not keep saying.
Since 1960, men have been heading, other equally. Education. Other equally.
Professor Rukaya, under Goodluck Jonathan, was Minister of Education.
That's one of
Dr.
What you are saying is in line of what is. The bane of economy everywhere in the world process was also the bane of economy.
Madam due process was also a Minister of Education.
And Professor Joy Ogu was Foreign Affairs Minister.
You see, I have the privilege of being the only woman here. And this is a replication of what happened.
Don't try to see as if don't be a defeatist.
I'm not a defeatist.
You stick to your fight.
What I'm saying is, these women, I mean, is it Mr. Sadala, is it not possible that one of these ladies be assigned, ministries other than the Ministry of Women Affairs?
Well, Claire, that's a good question. I mean, you're asking me. I know that you weigh in. Yes. There are 9 women. Yes. The president is not going to appoint 9 women to be minister of state, minister for, minister with, minister into, minister through women affairs and social development. Exactly. Certainly not. That's why I said, even before you moved, I said, look, we have had a male as permanent secretary, Federal Ministry of Women Affairs.
Recently, when Buhari was in Buhari's government, who was the minister of FCT? That's Ramatu. Is she not a woman?
It's time a man also stirred that ministry.
No problem. But I mean, Claire, you won't forget this one interaction we had on Good Morning Nigeria. Pauline Talent, Dame Pauline Talent, Minister of Women Affairs, pleasant lady, efficient, effective, former deputy governor of Plateau. There was a number of topics we discussed on Good Morning Nigeria, and she was always readily our guest. On one occasion, I mean, she shed tears on the program. Yes. You shed tears, but I'm sure if it's a man that day I didn't shed tears, you say, look at his Kingsley, stone-faced. This issue didn't touch him. Sorry, please.
Sitela was there as a minister in aviation, and before her, that woman from Kema
Chikwe.
What are you saying?
Let us not go back. We are moving forward.
We are trying to go forward. But that is the prerogative. That is the prerogative of the president. And by the way, this age stuff, you see how we have come a long way. Different systems, and so on and so forth. But all of the ministers designate right now, all of them, including the youngest, is older than when General Yakubu Gowon became head of state of Nigeria in 1966. Absolutely.
And well, the difference there is that Gowon was thrust forward by circumstances. Yes. We are talking about being deliberate now.
Yes.
Talking about being deliberate.
Yes.
If he was thrust forward because he was the most senior officer from northern Nigeria, and so on and so forth. When we are being deliberate, we are talking about politics and governance, political parties, where things are discussed and so on. Well, I don't think an accident could be our criteria.
But Claire, let's also note this point, and I would like you gentlemen to comment on it. I've been trying to look for the appropriate synonym without sounding offensive. Yes. Because you are saying circumstances, good point, would thrust somebody onto the national scene, and we recognize that when he became head of state in 1st of August 1966. As I said, I've been looking for the appropriate synonym. Say, frequent reappearance of certain persons in public office. I'm sure somebody else will use a more offensive word, which is like recycling. So a question some persons, some analysts are asking would be, look, is there a shortage of talent from where these persons have been picked from? So that it will be the same person who's been this before, that, X this, X that, X that. Honorable Saleh.
I think that's one of the 4 fundamental issues that have been raised in the panel that I want to really touch on, and you have touched on that. Age, I think recycling. You see this?
No. I said frequent reappearance.
Frequent reappearance.
And so that will not be offensive. There is frequent reappearance.
While it would sound. I think we don't need to go to the legal aspect of it, because I know legally the law does not stop the government being well. I do not find recycling as offensive as others might, but there's no problem with that. In fact, as a matter of fact, in some very in large democracies, larger than Nigeria democracies such as India, United States, and the United Kingdom, you find people that have been in government in excess of 4 decades, and they're still doing very well. The leader of the minority leader of the U.S. Senate.
No. I'm talking about the legislature. I'm talking about the executive branch.
Even executive.
Yes.
The president of the United States is over 80. They have had a president who is 40. So I think age should really, or how long you have been in government, shouldn't be a factor. It should be a factor where the experience is really needed. And in the case of Nigeria, where we have huge challenges, I think we can't afford to trivialize governance. We can't afford to take the least experience, no matter the level of agitation.
Yes, we have to move.
Yes, one other aspect that has been raised. One other aspect that has been raised, which I just not necessarily correct, but I want to shed more light. Barrister has alluded to the fact that the president might have zonal ministers. I don't think that is the case at this time. I think he is going to have ministers from all the states, 36, and then the other ones can come from any zone. And I think you've also talked about policy thrust, which Ezenwa is not being nice when we say things like that. I think the civil society, the media, to a large extent, and I'm glad that Kingsley also referred to the issue of accountability. I would like to really disagree totally with Ezenwa on the issue of accountability. The system that we practice really makes it very easy for us to hold our leaders accountable, just that we are lazy. Now, before the president presented himself for election, he had a manifesto. The manifesto is the policy thrust of the president, is the policy document of the president. The civil society, the media should hold him to that. That is what he promised to do Nigerians, his manifesto. He is going to implement his manifesto. So civil society must not be lazy by being populist, by just telling Nigerians what they want to hear, criticizing government. No, there's no time for populism, there's no time for tokenism. He has a manifesto. The civil society must engage themselves. They must really, really not be lazy. They should probe into the manifesto of the president and then ask questions. Has he really delivered?
Yes, let me put you on hold. Yeah, our time is spent so that we can come back to the studio and bring in Barrister Jallo. But let me, I'm sure you're listening to the Honorable, and he's actually, Ezenwa, if you're there, he's alluding, that civil societies are lazy in terms of, demanding for accountability, in terms of following, the executives and all that. You want to quickly respond to that so that we come back to the studio?
No, I don't like to respond to those kind of things. I think Honorable was being territorial as always with politicians. The challenge, when you say the manifesto is the policy direction of the president, that is that's broad. In terms of specifics, you appoint a minister. What particularly will that minister be doing in 1 year? We should know that. We used to have what we call Buhari Meter. I don't know whether Honorable was in the country when we had Buhari Meter. Buhari Meter was a creation of civil society which we were following the promises that the president made. But in specific terms, you couldn't track in real terms what those he appointed were doing, because what they were assigned to do was not clear. But let's even shift from that and say, look, people are talking about policy trust. Policy trust. There has been no innovation wrong in the last at every forum that I've had opportunity. All we have done in the last 40 years is privatization, commercial. All of those things are things that are being carried over from one administration to another. In terms of it's just in terms of its scale. The things that were not sold by Obasanjo were sold by Jonathan. The ones Jonathan did not sell, President Buhari sold. And everything is about selling. It's not about how do we industrialize? Where are we going to take our country? And that conversation is not holding. So what is the manifesto of the APC that I'm going to worry myself about in terms of what, holding. I am saying specifics. Let's engage specifics. Kingsley talked about KPIs and all of those things. We followed those processes. But you know that those KPIs are nice sounding things that are used to capture public imagination and divert attention from what needs to happen in terms of citizen oversight and engagement. And that is what I'm talking about. I said, put these things in public space. If you are appointing a minister of education, and that is what the Constitution is saying now. Yes, you attach a portfolio to the minister. Tell us also what that minister will do for you in 1 year, so that whether as civil society, whether as citizen groups, whether as even an interested individual, I can raise those questions. Look, the National Assembly ought to ordinarily be that oversight place for citizens. But as you know, over the years, the reputational baggage that it carries has not allowed it to do that effectively. Of course, you know what has happened with public hearings and the challenges that has posed, the challenges of oversight and all of those issues. We need to rouse our citizens to be able to understand that if people are appointed into public office, we should know what they are going to be delivering for us. And that does not require, it's not rocket science to do that. So when you say laziness, that civil society that is just criticism, is not being in tune the level of input and work that this program is not enough for me to engage honorable in terms of even what we have done with the National Assembly, where he was the public petition committee of the National Assembly, and how it even sabotages citizens' efforts in accountability. But the big issue is that for us as a country, what we need to do now is not to get into this hallelujah that, these persons that have been appointed, they are coming with this, that, and that. All the other people that have been appointed before them came with even better credentials, if you like. But what has been the service delivery outcomes and value for money attachment to that we have had? And that is the challenge, except we are saying that 1999 that we have never appointed people who...
I am sorry to interject here. We're actually running out of time, and your connection is giving us some form of issues. So we'd just like to appreciate you. Your contribution is well noted, and as usual, we'll be keeping on this story. It's developing until they assign their portfolios. We will not stop discussing.
And then after the portfolios are assigned, we will be hearing juicy ministry, not so juicy ministry.
But let's come back to Barrister. I'm going to ask you a question, and it's if you look at, a lot of people have really talked about the presence of ex-governors as members, and these are tested hands. What's your opinion? What value will this ex-governors bring to this administration?
Now, Clark, let's look objectively without sentiments.
Yes.
Take the case of El-Rufai, whose screening has not been completed yet, and assess his performance. I'm not from Kaduna, I'm from Gombe. But go around, since the beginning of this democracy, we have had so many governors in Kaduna. But when you go to Kaduna today, you can see the entire city and other local governments have changed.
That's one.
Let's be very objective on that.
Yes.
Putting sentiment aside.
Some will also argue Ganduje did the same thing in Kano, but it's not on the list.
The question is this. You see, Ganduje, honestly, Kingsley, he has performed, but politically speaking, he has a problem of not getting unpopular support, meaning, Konkoso is taking advantage of overshadowing him. But Ganduje did very, very well. But the support, I don't know where his support is having problem, and if you look at it, that even before he became the national chairman.
I'm afraid you have to conclude your thoughts. Generally, yes.
Look at it. That's true. And take Ganduje Clark. See if you are coming from other parts of in Kano. See the high bridges he has built.
We are not evaluating. Just
and
last sentence.
The governors you are talking about.
Yes, last sentence.
That bringing the governors in. You cannot divorce politics, like with experienced hands, as Honorable has said. Don't try to make aesthetic that an ex-governor. An ex-governor has something to offer, and if he states presenting that it is the candidate, so be it. What can you do?
All right, I have to stop you here, Barrister Jallo. I have to really stop you. Thank you very much for your contributions, because we're really out of time. And let me also appreciate Honorable Shehu Sale Hassan, former member, House of Representatives, and Dr. Osawaru Okontwa, public affairs analyst, of course, who's joining us for the first time here in our studio. It was a pleasure having all of you gentlemen. Okay, let's quickly see what's happening in the world of sports. And France ends Morocco's quarterfinal hopes to cruise into the quarterfinals of the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup, and just as Colombia wins to reach the tournament's last 8 for the first time.
Morocco's run at this year's FIFA Women's World Cup has ended after a 4-0 loss to France in the round of 16 Tuesday. The Atlas Lionesses were the last African team to exit the tournament after Nigeria and South Africa were eliminated in the round of 16, while Zambia crashed out in the group stage. In the other Tuesday's round of 16 game, Colombia edged Jamaica 1-0 to reach the quarter-final for the first time and set up a clash against England. Meanwhile, Nigeria's representative at this year's World School Football Championship in Rabat, Morocco, Fosla Academy, have arrived the country with warm welcome after the team's heroic performance, which earned the nation an automatic qualification and one more slot for the 2024 edition in China. Football advocates at the reception believe grassroots sports development remains key in unheartening great players for the national teams and also puts Nigeria on national football map.
And we have also been given an opportunity to say we will bring another second contestant by virtue of our excellent performances. So I am so proud to be in Nigeria, and I sincerely believe this achievement is worth celebrating.
We have a Ministry of Sports, of course, but they should have a robust program where they will encourage grassroots sporting activities, even at the local government levels.
Fosla Academy reached the round of 16 of the tournament but failed to book a quarter-final belt. It is a performance that guaranteed them a slot in the 2024 edition of the showpiece in China.
So that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We appreciate you being with us. Tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
Not just yourselves. Make sure that you are a patriotic Nigerian. From all of us here, GMN crew, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.